age. Welcome to the reading of the book from E W Kenyon, The Two Kinds of Knowledge, First Words. This is a challenging study of a vital issue that touches the heart of our restless age. Faith's landmarks are nearly all erased. We are groping for the path that will lead us to the light. The approach. No, I have never been able to accept the Bible as a revelation. Why? Because it is a miracle book. It begins with miracles. It sponsors miracles. Every one of the healing characters was a miracle worker, until finally we come to Jesus. I recognize him as the most outstanding product of the human family, but I cannot accept him as being conceived independent of natural generation. I cannot understand a resurrection. They are both contrary to human experience and reasoning. There are no such things as miracles. But don't you believe that there is a God? I believe there is some force that we cannot understand that is out of the reach of human knowledge. But as for a personal God, I have no evidence. I have given 40 years to scientific investigation in physics, chemistry, and biology, but I cannot find God. Would you like to believe there is a God if it could be proven that he exists and is an intelligent God of love? Yes, I would, but there is no way to find him. I have sought through every avenue of human investigation, and he is not there. If I should tell you, Doctor, that there was a way of finding him, would it seem credible to you? But first, let me show you why you take the mental attitude that you do. You know that all the knowledge that we have today in a mechanical, chemical, metallurgical, and scientific fields has come from one source. Here the doctor looked very much interested. His keen, intelligent eyes widened. Yes, I recognize that, he said. All this knowledge comes from our 5 senses. I have often thought of it. These 5 senses, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and seeing, are the doors into the brain. Yes, doctor, but we cannot belittle these servants. They have given to the world knowledge that seems almost incredible. When you were a boy, the electric car was just coming in. Men were just writing about steam wagons. Electricity was almost unknown as we view it today. You have lived through the greatest inventive, creative age of human history. All the knowledge that has been gained these last 70 years has been gained through these 5 senses. All the knowledge that is taught in the academies, schools, and universities is what we are going to call sense knowledge. The doctor spoke again. This time his voice was low and vibrant with feeling. There are limitations to this sense knowledge, as you call it, serious limitations. The other answered him, "We cannot know God through the senses. Had we been able to find him, things would have been different. Neither can we know the reason for creation, nor the reason for man. We cannot find in all our searchings the source of light, of life, of motion, of gravitation, and 100 other things before which the world stands baffled and confused. You see, doctor, sense knowledge has been unable to explain the apparent design in creation, where every need of this scientific and mechanical age is being met in the metals, chemicals, vegetables, and in the air and water. This fact alone proves that someone planned it. Someone knew that the age of mechanics and chemistry was coming and prepared for it." The doctor merely assented. His friend said, "You have noted, then, the limitations. Now I would like to suggest to you the solution of this problem. I wish to show you the bridge that crosses the chasm that sense knowledge faces. You know, whenever man has reached the limit of sense knowledge, he at once turns philosopher or guesser." The doctor smiled and said, "Most of our scientific books are beautiful guesses. I know of no guesser in the class with Darwin." Then his face grew serious, and he said, "What is this solution?" His friend answered, "It's another kind of knowledge. It is revelation knowledge. If we may so call it, for argument's sake, let us assume for a moment that there is a God, and that this wonderful earth of ours was designed and created by this God. One more assumption. Man comes on the scene. Man is the reason for this earth. God created this earth for his man, who is coming. That would give us the reason for creation and the reason for man, and it would suggest the nature of man, that man would be a spirit in the same class with the God who created him to be his companion. Then it would be the most natural thing in the world if God should wish to communicate with this man. And if he did communicate with him, he would need to come to man's level. It would have to be a communication that the senses could understand. It would be in the realm of sense knowledge. It would need to be written through men whom he controlled, men who yielded themselves to his sway and wrote as he moved them. The doctor looked up and said, "That's credible, but that's a miracle." "But you see, doctor, spiritual things are just as real as material things, and there are spiritual realities as well as material realities. God is a spirit. Man is a spirit. He lives in a body. He has a soul composed of intellect and reasoning faculties. The thing we call subconscious mind is nothing else than his spirit, the real man. It would be the most normal thing that God should communicate with this man, and man should be able to communicate with him. So you see that the book we call the Bible is a reasonable thing, a natural thing, and a thing that man actually demands. You know that all men are religious? This is spirit hunger for God. Man is really God-hungry. This is because he was created to be the companion of God. Man is God-lonesome. You will admit that you are a searcher after God. The doctor's fine, beautiful head was bent. He was leaning on his hands. He did not answer. There was silence for a few moments. Then he said, "I wish I knew that this were true. If this Bible is a revelation, it would solve the human problem." They sat in silence again. Then the doctor, speaking more to himself than to his companion, said, "That book tells us of the reason for creation, its origin, the source of life and light. I can see now how revelation knowledge is necessary to sense knowledge. They should never be separated one from the other." This conversation took place in the lobby of a hotel. It will illustrate the mental attitude of the leading minds of the scholastic world. This will introduce you to the subject of this little book. Now read and live. Chapter 1. The Achievements and Limitations of Sense Knowledge. Few of us have realized that the great body of knowledge that has been accumulated through the ages has come to us through the five senses. The human body has really been the laboratory for the testing and investigation of all human activities. Every step in the fields of chemistry, mechanics, metallurgy, surgery, mental sciences, and the arts has come from this one common source. The five senses, the humbled, abused senses, are the five servants that have been conveying knowledge of every sort and kind to the brain for it to classify, number, and file away for future use. It is said that Mr. Edison experimented more than 3,000 times with the incandescent lamp before he arrived. Each mechanical invention, the radio, the adding machine, the typewriter, has gone through a series of experimentations and developments since its first conception. This will cause you to see the painstaking, patient research work that men have done in order to give us what we have today in the mechanical, scientific, and chemical world. We would like to pay our tribute to this patient, hard-working body of men in the field of scientific research who have given us the benefits of all their labor in their respective fields. The five senses, sight, feeling, hearing, tasting, and smelling, are the parents of all this knowledge. They are not always reliable. The senses may become impaired by accident, carelessness, overwork, or dissipation, so that they are not to be depended upon. They are not absolutely true. Their findings are continually being revised. Their limitations are known and reckoned upon. Yet what ministers they have been! We would not for one moment criticize them. We know where their frontiers are located. They cannot know the beginning of things. They can only speculate when they arrive at the last frontier of experimentation. They know nothing of the reason for creation, the reason and origin of man, the origin of life, the origin of motion, the origin of matter, the origin of force. Standing on the edge of this last frontier of their limitations, the mind is unsatisfied. It craves knowledge, and so unconsciously it becomes speculative. It begins to evolve theories. Reason has no data, no absolute facts on which it can build. It can only dream now and theorize. Dr. Darwin stood out on the last frontier of human experimentation. He had reached the very limit. The Darwinian theory of evolution was born out of his lack of knowledge of the reason for creation, the origin of matter, of light, of motion, of gravitation. He was unwilling to accept revelation knowledge that, at this point of his extremity, would have helped him bridge the chasm and put his feet upon solid ground. His sense knowledge could not find God, so he could not believe in God. Sense knowledge can see the handiwork of God, can see the design in creation, but it cannot find the designer. It is often unwilling to admit that there is a designer because it cannot find him. He could not find life in the plant that he dissected. yet he admitted there was life. He could not see thought, yet he believed in it. He could not see the brain function, yet he knew that it did. There seems to be a little inconsistency in the man who refuses to admit anything beyond the range of sense knowledge. The telescope of sense knowledge marks his horizon. There Darwin began to guess and theorize, and he gave to us the great master guess, evolution. He had reached the place where revelation knowledge was imperative. He refused that and stepped out into the darkness of sense knowledge. He bridged impassable chasms, one after another, with a guess. The revelation of God was the missing link that he needed. Not believing in God, he had to find the solution of a universe. Revelation would have supplemented his limited knowledge, and he would have stood shoulder to shoulder with Lord Kelvin and the other great scientists of his day who believed in God. But he repudiated revelation, forgetting that he had reached the unknowable in creation in 100 places. If our modern educators could realize the limitations of sense knowledge and know that the Bible holds the key to their quest, they would have the real conclusion of creation's story. Chapter 2. The Revelation. The Bible stands alone among the books of the world. Its outstanding characteristic, which differentiates it from every other book, is that it is a revelation from God to man. It demands man's obedience, claims man as its subject. It does not profess to be a scientific treatise, but it is the mother of all sciences. It has given birth to our educational systems, to our philanthropic enterprises, our mechanical, chemical, and biological discoveries. No nation ever needed a patent or a copyright law until this revelation book had been given to it. Germany never awakened in chemistry or mechanics until the Bible had been put into her mother tongue. The same thing was true in England. This revelation has come to us on the level of sense knowledge, in language we can understand. It is a revelation of the reason for creation. It is a revelation of the way of creation, how it actually came into being by faith, and that the Creator is a faith God. This is perfectly in harmony with all the facts that sense knowledge has gathered. It is the man of faith who creates things in the mechanical, architectural, and industrial world. Faith is the creative force in man. Faith is the creative force in the Creator. God simply said, "Let there be." The Bible is a revelation of the reason for man, the nature of man, and the destiny of man. It is a revelation of the source of life. It is a revelation of sin and its origin, and of man's redemption from its dominion and authority. It is a revelation of the why of the Jewish nation. It is a revelation of the most outstanding character of human history, the man of Galilee, proved to be the Son of God by his resurrection from the dead. It is a revelation of a perfect redemption on legal grounds. It is a revelation of a new creation created in Christ Jesus. It is a revelation of the family of God, of man's place in the heart dream of the Creator. It is a revelation of the cause of sin, suffering, and death, and of their final destruction. It is a revelation of a new heaven and a new earth, and man's eternity with God in perfect bliss. This revelation is necessary to sense knowledge. It crowns sense knowledge. It shows how the human intellect has been debauched by sin, and generations of wrong thinking can come into perfect fellowship with the Creator God. It is a revelation of God as a Father, and of this Father God as a God of love. The denial and repudiation of revelation knowledge has been the darkest blot upon the modern scholastic mind, which owes its very growth and development to this revelation. Chapter 3. Some sense knowledge facts. No one ever saw an atom, yet the scientific world profoundly believes in them. No one ever saw an electron, and yet men spend years searching for them. The silent pictures thrown upon the screen mean nothing to the blind. The noisy radio means nothing to the deaf. The deeply spiritual things mean nothing to the man of sense knowledge, who has dwarfed his spirit nature, kept it in bondage, undeveloped, like a child chained in a garret without book or instructor. Is it any wonder that the psalmist cried, "Bring my soul out of prison, and I will praise thee"? Reason holds the same relation to the spirit that the body does to reason. When the body rules reason, chaos and calamity are certain. It is also true that when reason rules your spirit, calamity is inevitable. Someone says, "But how can I develop my spirit?" Spirit development comes through fellowship with the Father God, through His revelation. The mind becomes renewed until it can know and understand the Father's will in this revelation. The heart, by feeding upon this revelation, comes into the closest fellowship with the Father. Its life becomes keyed to the pitch of His will. Just as sense knowledge is developed by reading sense knowledge literature, so the Spirit grows by reading and meditating in the revelation that was designed to be its food. For man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. We have accepted His revelation, and we know that He is a person. We know that He can reveal Himself to our spirits, so that we are as sure of spiritual realities as we are of the realities of the senses. We know that He is the Creator, the Sustainer, and the ruler of this universe. We know that He is a spirit, and we know that man is in His class of spirit being, and can become a partaker of His nature. We know that man can contact Him, that he can speak with Him, and that God hears him. We know that God finds His highest joy in fellowship with man, and man reaches his highest development in fellowship with God. We know that God is a faith God, and that He brought the universe into being by the word of faith. This universe was to be the home of His man. He said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He said, "Let there be an earth," and the earth came into being. Then He said, "Let there be vegetation," and it came. "Let there be animal life," and it came. "Let us make man." He also said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth." And the sun and moon and stars and the constellations leaped into being, fresh from the womb of the faith of God. He is not only a faith God, but He is a love God. He is love. He has faith. You can understand why natural faith that comes from man's spirit has been in the creators and the inventors of the ages. All great achievements of man have been faith achievements. The great achievements of God are faith achievements. The thing that calls the achievements into being is love. Now you can understand why God demands faith from your spirit in His Word. Because God cannot communicate with you through the senses. He can communicate with your spirit. Faith is not the product of the senses. It is the product of your spirit. Consequently, He demands faith of you, not of your reason, but of your spirit. When He said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and soul and mind," He was talking to man's spirit. For man's reasoning faculties cannot love. Man cannot love a woman or a man through his reason. It is your spirit that loves. We talk about the heart loving. The heart is just a figurative term for the spirit. So faith is a spirit product, and your spirit is the real you. The spirit in you should have the dominance over your reasoning faculties, just as your reasoning faculties have the dominance over your body.